Hi there, thank you for joining me again on the load development with my Tikka T3x Tac A1 in 223 Remington. In the last video, link in the description below, we worked on the ideal powder weight and I found a really good looking node between 23.2 and 23.4 grains. I stated that I'd choose a charge directly in the middle of that 23.3 grain, but while calculating the velocities and pressures for the seating depth test, I noticed an expected increase of around 35 feet per second between the longest and shortest cartridge lengths, and this would take me to the very top of the powder node and perhaps even into the scatter node. So for this test, I'll stick to the lower end, 23.2 grains, which will comfortably accommodate all the seating depths. I still believe 23.3 may be optimal, but I'll test for this later. On the point of calculating the velocities and pressures, if you don't have either QuickLoad or Gordon's reloading tool, you really should. These tools, while software simulations, are surprisingly accurate and enable you to evaluate a huge array of what-if parameters without wasting components or indeed having an accident. QuickLoad is a commercial tool, and to be honest, it's getting a little long in the tooth. It still receives annual updates with new powders and bullets, etc., but the interface has never been modernised, and it misses some of the features found in Gordon's reloading tool. GRT, on the other hand, is open source, free to use, and supported through users' real-world feedback on individual lots of powder, bullets, etc. The cartridges were loaded exactly as you saw in video number 2 in this series. They were annealed, full length sized, mandrel die, trimmed, deburred and chamfered, primer pockets cleaned and reamed, tumble cleaned, case necks brushed, primed, powder charged, and finally the bullet is seated. This is the only step that differs from before, as I'm changing seating depths. A micrometer seating die is invaluable. There's simply no guessing if you have the seating depth correct or not. These are precision instruments, and this Forster die took me from 5 thou to 80 thou off the lands, and it was never more than half a thou from the desired length, and I would guess that most of that variance will actually be in the bullet. Using 23.2 grain of Vitavuri N135, I'll load from 5 thou off the lands in 5 thou steps all the way back to 80 thou off the lands. That's 16 cartridge lengths to be tested. I'm only going to use 3 round tests, and before I get all the comments that 3 rounds is not statistically significant, I completely agree. What this will give me is some certainty on what does not work. Adding additional rounds into an already poor group does not make it any smaller. With the likely nodes this test gives, I'll then be able to perform a final test on fine changes in the powder and cartridge length. Additionally, components are scarce at the moment, so compared to using 5 round groups, saving 32 rounds is not a bad idea at all. Here's the longest and the shortest bullet side by side. 75 thou of a difference in overall length. That's about 1.9mm, hardly anything at all. You wouldn't think it would make much of a difference. Let's find out. All 16 groups shot off. 16 shots, 16 groups, and a further 2 over the chronograph, so 50 shots in total over the chrono, and again the chrono caught them all. Let's go and see how we did. Looking pretty good, really. There's a few standout ones there. The 40 thou. 3 shots in basically one hole. And also the 5 thou. Fouling group number 2 was also 5 thou. So 2 shots there, 3 shots there. 10 thou's not too bad either. But anyway, let's take it back to the computer and work out what's really happened. So here's the groups that I shot today, and I've measured those with Ballistic X as before. I'm trying to keep the video short. The previous ones were getting quite lengthy, so I'm not going to go through all the groups, you'll be pleased to hear. Feel free to pause the video if you're interested. However, there are 2 standout groups. The one at 40 thou off the lands with a quite amazing 0.098 MOA, and the one at 5 thou off, which was at 0.189 MOA. Now, I don't believe for a second this rifle is capable of shooting in the zeros, and even under 2 MOA with larger group sizes. But let's see what the analysis spreadsheet says about these groups. If you watched the last video, you will have seen my analysis spreadsheet before, so I won't go through its working again. Refer to that video if you're interested. I'm using exactly the same sheet again, this time extending horizontally to take care of the 16 loads that we shot today. You will notice that my loading priorities have not changed. It's tempting simply to go for the smallest group at this stage, especially one in the zeros. But with only 3 shots in the group, that may well just be statistical noise. So the priorities are, firstly, the smallest group. And clearly that was load number 8 at 40 thou off the lands in the zeros. And the second best group was load 1, just below 0.2 MOA. That said, it's interesting to note that if you look at the 11 groups from 30 thou off the lands to 80 thou off the lands, the average for all of these was about 0.4 MOA for all of them. So that's given me real confidence that the powder charge is in the right ballpark. So the second priority is the change in POI between adjacent groups. So if I cleared the noise, firstly around the 40 thou off, we can see here that between 35 and 40 thou off, we had a movement to the right of just under 0.1 of an inch, and between 40 and 45 we had a vertical movement of about 0.15 of an inch. That's perfectly fine. If we do the same for the 5 thou off the lands, we can see between 5 and 10 thou off, again we had a movement of about 0.1 of an inch, slightly more. So that's also looking really good. The third priority is the low SD change between adjacent groups. So if we look at the SDs around 40, again looking quite good. 11's down to 4.2 for the 40 itself, and likewise for the 5 thou and 10 thou off, we had SDs of 11 and 10.4, so that's looking quite strong as well. What you may note from here is that the expected increase in velocity and pressure that the textbooks that QuickLoad and GRT predicted weren't measured here. I'm not quite sure why that is, but these are the results that I have. I have to say that I've got more confidence in the 5 thou length rather than the 40 thou length, and here's why. You might remember when I was at the range I said that the fouling group number 2 was also loaded at 5 thou off. If I take that 2 round group and superimpose it upon the 5 thou 3 round group, we have a composite 5 round group. And what's most exciting about that is it doesn't really get any bigger. It's still 0.189 MOA, and the SD is lower with only 8 feet per second. So thank you again for joining me for this video. That's it for now. The next video will be verification loads. Let's see if we can get it to perform consistently. Bye for now.